She can hear me. I think we'll start the meeting right now. Welcome to this special meeting we're having. I'd like to just kind of set the groundwork for you here quickly. First off, I think we should take a moment to think about our friends in Napa, and we've called all our friends in the area there. The incident of the earthquake the other night that we all wrote it out, but they had a little tougher time, and their downtown was a pretty serious situation. And we're in our beautiful EOC building that I know some people aren't too happy about, but let me tell you, the people I talked to every day are very pleased that they brought everybody together. So I think we have to thank goodness we're not involved in that serious situation they have in the wineries, putting all their wine barrels back together and slowing down the drains. But I just want to kind of set the stage for you a little bit. We're not going to be discussing how to build a new bridge tonight, in my opinion. We're going to be discussing, it all came about by last Tuesday night. We were all there, most of us, and it was a very lengthy meeting, a lot of public discussion, good input. And Wednesday morning, first thing I got a call from Patty Roberts, Greenfoot Hills, and she and I had a great discussion about a comment we made about emergency situation. And so I immediately contacted Alice and City Attorney Condotti, and we started the ball rolling there. And we were scheduled to have a conference call with Senator Hill, and scheduling didn't work out. But from there, we just kind of built off of that. And it's strictly about the agenda item and the great work the team put together here rapidly over the weekend regarding this special meeting tonight. So we'll get a roll call going and start from there.
Councilmember Patridge?
Here.
Vice Mayor Fraser?
Here.
Councilmember Paulcheck?
Here.
Councilmember Alfano?
Here.
Mayor Mueller?
Here. So we're all present, and thank you all for coming out. So we'll start with right away with our acting. Actually, it was Alex's first morning as acting interim city manager, and we got after him right away, and he and Tony got on the stick and got trying to work because it wasn't that simple as we thought. We could just have a meeting. But anyway, so Alex, please.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council members, and members of the public. Thank you for being here tonight. The item before you tonight is to consider options and funding for emergency Pillars Creek Bridge replacement. This meeting here tonight is called because it's a follow-up from last Tuesday's meeting where the state parks came and gave a report to the council. And what we're trying to do is trying to expedite the project of a bridge fix or replacement. State Parks stated that it would take almost 2 years until a fix and a functional opening to the public for a new bridge. The Pillars Creek Bridge serves as a vital link between both the north and the south portions of Half Moon Bay. It's a vital corridor where children travel to school, adults travel to work, and visitors enjoy it for recreation. In the spirit of moving the project forward as soon as possible, staff recommends allocating $100,000 of Measure J half-cent sales tax funds with no strings attached towards soft costs to start work on biological, engineering, and environmental studies that will be necessary to permanently fix or replace the bridge. While this funding may not be adequate to complete the process, it would facilitate immediate commencement of necessary biological and engineering studies that will be required for the project. Once the measures for repair or replacement are finalized or complete, then the city would look to consider processing an emergency coastal development permit for the project in accordance with section 18.20.040 of the Half Moon Bay zoning code. Furthermore, the city would like to collaborate with state parks in starting the process and getting a permanent fix or replacement for this bridge. Our planning staff is ready to assist state parks in any way possible to expedite this project. Prior to this meeting, city staff has attempted to make contact with state parks officials several times. I finally got an email 5 minutes before this meeting tonight stating that they apologize they cannot attend this meeting, but they appreciated the report that we brought forward. So now I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to our City Attorney, Tony Condotti, to go ahead and walk the council through what an emergency CDP would entail.
I'll make this brief because, as the mayor mentioned, as Alex alluded to, the purpose of tonight's meeting is really not to go through an emergency or go through that process. The emergency application process is through our local coastal program, and it's processed by the planning director. So the recommended action to take is to direct staff to consider processing an emergency coastal development permit after the necessary studies are done to determine exactly what is required in order to fix the bridge to make it safe and get it back open again. It's really a fairly straightforward process. An application is filed that would have to be by state parks, or at least on behalf of state parks, describing the nature of the emergency and the measures that would be required to abate the emergency condition. The city is required to give public notice of the emergency action. The nature of the notice isn't specified. It just says to the maximum extent practical under the circumstances. An emergency permit can be issued with conditions as specified in the permit, and I would envision the conditions would include measures to limit potential impacts to the red-legged frog habitat, which we know Torcillos Creek is in that area. So the work that has to occur immediately, however, would be the engineering to analyze the bridge and recommend a repair or replacement, and secondly, the biological study necessary to develop measures to protect the habitat. After the emergency permit is issued, the city must provide notice to the Coastal Commission as well as notice to the Planning Commission. And then within 60 days of the issuance of the permit, either whatever the measures are need to be discontinued and removed, or a coastal development permit needs to be submitted in the ordinary course. So assuming that a permanent solution is implemented through the emergency permit process, then we would need to go through and fully process a coastal development permit. I guess it could be concurrently with the work going on or retroactively. And because of the location in a sensitive resource area, that coastal development permit would be appealable to the Coastal Commission. That's, in a nutshell, the emergency process. The recommendation for tonight is simply to allocate the resources to assist state parks in getting the ball rolling. So I'm happy to answer any questions or respond to comments.
Council members, comment of staff at this time? I think my one follow-up, Tony, and I know we worked up in the weekend over it, and you did finally reach out in the report here to the Coastal Commission staff, and they concur with this process that we're starting here.
Yes, and the reason for it is that they recognize the importance of this both as a transportation corridor as well as an access point to the Pacific Ocean. And so, I guess the challenge in this case is, by definition, an emergency is generally considered to be a sudden event, or an event that has a sudden onset. In this case, I think the suddenness is the inability to use the bridge, and so it's not a perfect fit, but under the circumstances, the Coastal Commission staff agrees that it would warrant considering this an emergency, similar to one of the vehicular bridges over Torcillos Creek suddenly being inaccessible.
Great, yeah, Marina?
And it is, although the bridge has been deteriorating, and they were aware of it, and they started to put things away, the emergency is because of the break. It was an accident on that day, so there was an incident. It wasn't just a slowly deteriorating, which it was doing, but it's the break itself with the truck.
That's right.
Very good. So, yes, Councilman Walter.
So the break is that the California State Parks drove their vehicle over the bridge and they broke it, just to be clear. So, has there been a response or reaction from CA State Parks? They know this, that we're having this meeting, and have we received any response from them?
So regarding state parks, the one item that we have is that we got the email right before this meeting. That's the one contact I received back from them. The other item is that we're working with Senator Hill's office to set up a conference call later on this week, and along with Assemblymember Gordon's office. So to get state parks to the table with city staff and with the senator and assemblyman staff as well, to communicate what we are doing this evening.
Got it. So we had at last Tuesday's city council meeting, we had a representative from State Parks. We had two, one to tell us that the bridge was broken, and one to stand there and not tell us anything, and just say that, well, it's pretty interesting, as you recall, I think I see many of the same faces, you'll recall that the discussion was around, well, we really don't know what to do yet until we have some funding, and then we said, well, we'll provide seed funding. And he said, well, we really don't know what to do yet. We have funding, and he was stuck. And he didn't really bring any answers to us. And so I think we're trying here, and I think this is the right idea. I think
No food. Sorry.
what we're trying to do is get them unstuck and get some traction on this project. And when we say allocate funding, the same thing as budgeting funding. Has to have a specific use, or are we gifting funding?
Basically, what we're doing is we're allocating funding that Measure J has sent sales tax funds for this project. Now, how we go ahead and expend those funds on biological reports and the mechanisms of all that would all have to be worked out once we hear back from State Parks and how we want to move forward. The funding is taking off of what is currently in the Measure J funds for other projects. For this current fiscal year, we're going to have to reallocate them and shift them over for this specific project at this time.
Councilman Hill?
So the only key here, assuming we approve this, is that the state also then agrees to accept this and move forward with the emergency CDP and working in conjunction with us. If there's a disconnect between us and the state, then it's stalled, am I right?
That is correct. So the city is trying to do its due diligence and everything within its power to expedite trying to have a permanent fix for this public piece of infrastructure. And we do not own that structure, nor do we maintain that structure. So all we can do is try to collaborate with them and try to work this with putting finances forward and city staffing to help process permits or whatever else they might need.
So this initiative, this action, if we take it, is really trying to remove one more barrier from CA State Parks to not get started. It's take one more excuse away, right? And I was pretty irritated with State Parks, and I think I expressed so at a meeting last Tuesday, with their poor response, inability to articulate a plan or concrete steps. I'm all for removing a barrier to getting started for them and improving the funding and budgeting funding for specific uses for biological studies that would need to happen anyway for this project. What I don't know is how to get state parks unstuck and get them to be responsive to us. Are we chasing them around with our checkbook saying we can get started? A little bit, but we're removing one barrier for them to get going. But we need assistance, and I'll look to Senator Hill's office, and very specifically, we really, truly need some assistance with this. I don't know that they see the priority of this. There are safety issues that you're well aware. There's economic issues you're well aware. There's environmental issues. I know you're aware of all this. And so I think if this removes one more excuse from them, then let's remove that excuse. It's something we need to do. So I'm all for that. But I'll tell you that I'm interested I'm looking forward to being delighted by State Parks' response, but so far they've not given this attention that it deserves, and it's impacting our community in a really material way. And we want to do everything within our power to control and help that, and I think we're trying to do that tonight, so I'll end up supporting this.
Thank you. Briefly, I did, along with Senator Hill's office and Assemblyman Gordon's, we've been working like crazy to meet, and I told you Tuesday night for months they never even returned my call. And so I've used my other resources in Sacramento at a personal level to find out what's going on, and so we're still trying. We got a number of cards, so we'll get into it right now. I just want to remind you, we're not going to be redesigning the bridge tonight. Jerry, I know you're an expert in this. So let's just try to stick to this one agenda item to see if you are in support of us to step up with this sales tax money that the rest of the Bay Area, whoever comes and visits us, help support us. And Measure O will be a continuation of Measure J, but I think we as a council or staff and myself, and now the council has to decide tonight if we want to reallocate funds and make this thing move forward and break down that barrier. So we'll start with the cards, and we'll go with John Owen, and then followed by Jerry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know we're short on time, so I'll try to go quick. I know it's kind of like wanting to beat up on state parks. Oh. Sorry about that. I know it's been kind of becoming a pattern of wanting to beat up on the state parks over this. And they do, of course, deserve some of the abuse they're taking. But I did speak with the company that actually built that bridge, the 4 sections today. Spoke with one of their engineers. And his comments were basically, it is amazing that that bridge has lasted 21 years. I didn't make that up. That's what the guy said. I'll send you the email. He says that the bridge never should have been made out of the materials it was made. So I know we don't want to talk about, design, but we should consider that we are in an extremely challenging environment, and there will always be needs to repair the bridge. So whatever design we work on should take that into account, should be, how would I say, coastal commission friendly. I mean, one way he suggested, for example, it could have been to maintain this bridge, would have required that after every storm that the water flooded it, that you go power wash it. And that you would probably have to go and sandblast, bad rust, and spray paint it. We all know that's just not going to happen on a weekly basis out here. That would cost thousands of dollars to do something like that. So that should be considered. I do support what you guys are doing. I think it's great. I would like to see you maybe tone it down a little bit. Those guys are getting beat up pretty bad. I felt kind of bad for them the other night. I think they are doing their best. When they got the bridge, I don't really understand how they ended up with the bridge, but that was not a state-designed bridge, nor was it bought by the state, as I understand. They ended up with a pig in a poke. They ended up with something that just shouldn't have been there with that kind of material. And maintaining it, he might have, like I said, he might have been able to save some, but the gentleman really is impressed that our bridge lasted 21 years. So, thank you.
Thank you. Jerry Steinberg, followed by Jordan.
Well, as Mayor Muller suggested, we don't want to get into the engineering of the bridge. You can read about it in the oral reviews and blogs, but
If I may interrupt, Jerry, please. Trust me, when we redesign a new bridge, you don't think we're going to redesign it to make it right.
I agree.
With all the support from all of you, we'd have to take goofy pills if we don't think we're going to put something in like that. So.
I think basically, number one, I'd like to congratulate, I think Alex and Tony did a great job in putting this together. I think...
We don't get any credit at all?
Well, we're the ones that commissioned it, okay? But I think that it's great that you're moving ahead and you're moving ahead with speed. I think the question I really have is, you have $100,000, you're trying to break down a barrier. The bridge is going to have to be replaced eventually someday, but there's going to be a temporary fix, and I think there are a number of people that agree that there is a temporary fix possible. People with an engineering background that say that can be done, but I don't understand the $100,000. I see the portion for the biological studies. You always have to do that, but I think there should be a little bit more direction on that. what is the split between how much money is going to be spent for a temporary fix and a permanent fix? Because the permanent fix, as John alluded to, there's a lot of discussion. I mean, as I say, we don't want to go through it right now about what to do, and we can do that offline, but the temporary fix is what's the real issue right now, and it can be done, and that is the one that probably is going to be a little more difficult to get through the biological studies. Essentially, if you're going to put cribbing underneath the bridge, or posts under the bridge, or you're going to put steel beams across the portion of the bridge that's over the creek, those are the things that should be addressed. And if you just come up with $100,000 to the state, to the Parks Department, what are they going to do with it? I mean, you're not getting any direction at all. And I think there should be some direction about, yeah, we'd like to see immediately somebody, and I think it's more important to start with the temporary fix than with the permanent fix. You're going to have to replace the bridge, no question about it. I mean, everybody agrees with that. But it's obvious that the videos that have been taken show that these floor beams have deteriorated, and I thought the letter that you got from the designer, from the Continental people at York Continental, saying that the floor beams end should be closed now, that may be a key, because what these pictures, these videos show is that the longitudinal members are still intact. It's the cross members, so you're going to have some kind of bracing across that. That's what $100,000 should get started on. Is the state is going to have an engineer that they are agreeable with, that they're going to accept, someone that's carrying liability insurance that they're going to buy into, that's going to suggest a way to do a temporary fix on the bridge. So that's my...
Thank you, Jerry. I think you have more than 3 minutes. Our clock's not working. George, please, followed by Brian Hall.
Thank you, and I'll be brief to make up the difference. George Beard of Half Moon Bay, 408 Mount Beach Road. I just wanted to take a second to say that I am very encouraged by this council's proactive, solution-oriented, immediate actions and responses to date. I support your efforts on this, and I thank you very much.
Thank you, George. Brian, please, and followed by Bob Rogers.
Good evening, Brian Holt. First off, I want to thank the City Council for taking leadership on this. Clearly, the state is not, and I appreciate our local representatives doing so. One issue that I want to bring up, State Parks has been in a long and very noticeable hurt, and both from a leadership point of view, from a financing point of view, and from a number of areas. And they're obviously burdened with a lot of bureaucracy. There's a number of different initiatives going on looking at how do we redesign state parks, how do we recapture excellence in state parks. One of those initiatives right now is the Parks Board Commission. They recently released a report. One of their key recommendations in there was to establish a nonprofit partner in the state parks that could basically facilitate projects just as this. Now, this project won't be ready to be able to take advantage of that recommendation, but we do have local nonprofits, partners that can facilitate that sort of thing. We have here on the coast side, the Coast Side State Parks Association, a local group that is largely made up of docents and frankly I feel hasn't necessarily lived up to their potential. But it's a nonprofit organization that funds can be provided to, that can facilitate projects specifically as this through. They can contract with different entities, those sorts of consultants who want to provide pro bono services, that they can provide those, do those reports and do those things to the state. A couple examples, they provided the historic resources report on the Pigeon Point Lighthouse. They essentially procured and did the funding, procured the funds and did the studies necessary to build the Pescadero Marsh footbridge. So a very analogous project, able to secure funds from the nonprofit sector, different foundations, and they were able to basically break the stalemate with state parks, and that they were able to move forward from the nonprofit end. So as we move forward with this, I appreciate the city's efforts. I certainly hope that the state moves, but I hope that we reach out to our nonprofit partners. I hope Silicon Valley Community Foundation and others who can bring some funds to benefit the coast, where a lot of those members and people who live over the hill come over here to recreate. And I hope they can bring some of their resources to bear. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob, please, followed by Conor Nance.
mayors, city council members. Thank you. I'll rise to speak in support of you all and your efforts to fast track this whole thing. George used the word proactive. I'd like to echo that word. I think it's obvious to all of us that we have to be proactive and we have to, in a sense, take matters into our own hands here. Because if we rely on the state, well, it's not going to happen. So thank you for jumping on this issue. I'd just like to echo a lot of the comments and stress the importance of this north-south pedestrian, equestrian, recreational, historical, now historical corridor for the citizens of Half Moon Bay. So, and I'd just like to echo many of those thoughts in support of what you guys are doing. It's obvious that we have to take matters into our own hands. Just had a quick question. Are we going to use, is it possible for us to use the engineering firms that actually wanted to donate their services? It seemed to be kind of an intrigue. I don't know if the state will allow us to do that, but it seems to be that there's a lot of folks who locally are rising in support of the bridge and fast tracking it and trying to get it done quickly. So that's great. And did the state ever get back to us with a number? Because I think there was a specific, Rick had a specific question about he wanted a number that they needed to get this thing, get the ball rolling. So those are just a couple of questions I had. Thanks.
Thank you. Maybe staff can respond to some of these comments briefly after. Would you like to respond to that one right now, Alex? Okay, go ahead and Bob, and then we'll get John. Come on up, please.
So regarding engineering, that'll be up to the state to go ahead and make that decision, and I will take note of your request about local firms in town as we meet with them. The other item regarding soft costs, I had just a quick conversation with Chris Monig, who went and presented to you guys last Tuesday. I had a phone conversation with him back on Wednesday of last week, last time I spoke with him. And he was saying initial soft costs roll out about $500,000.
Thank you, John, and then followed by Lynette. Okay, thank you.
John Hernandez, 2912 Holden Avenue, Half Moon Bay. I believe that your thrust is in the right direction, getting our legislators involved. They have the most power, they know where the monies are, who to partner up with. So I think we're on the right course. That's what I would do. And then to the paperwork and starting, I think we're doing that correctly. Without the permits, you can't even step into the water drainage or anything like that, much less even put posts in, which I guess you'd be getting in trouble doing that. So I just wanted to say that. For Alex, the bridge was basically kind of donated from Half Moon Bay City to the state parks through some MTC funds. So basically they were gifted this bridge. And from day one, I have not seen the state parks do much maintenance of any kind in the 21 years. And 12 years ago, I started with trying to get them to refurbish that bridge and also the one over Sweetwood. And at that time, I had engineer firm come out and do us a bid, and we handed that to state parks. And at that time was like $400,000 or $500,000. And of course, 12 years later, it's ballooned even higher. The figure that I saw in the paper of 1.8 to replace them, I kind of wonder if that's correct, knowing the way state parks do some things. I wonder. I think it could be done cheaper and with different types of material. At the time, the Core-10 steel that the bridge was made out of was, oh, this is the answer to everything. And you can get 3 engineers together and ask them what material is best for a bridge near the ocean. You get 3 different answers. One of the latest ones that was put in was over in Miramar area there by the county. asked that engineer why they didn't put some galvanized paint on it. Oh, no, it's not gonna do any good. Ask another person, it would help years more to preserve it. One of the other problems with the bridge here is the side rails were made out of thin material. It was, say, a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch, but it was a hollow core, so you only had like 1/8 of an inch of metal for the brush to go through. If it was 1 inch by 1 inch of steel, solid, it would have lasted even much longer. And that's what happened to the size of the material that they used. So,
Thank you, John. Appreciate it very much for all your services there and history lesson. Lynette, please, and then followed by Walter.
Hi, my name is Lynette Kurtlois with Falconry Solutions, and I live at 212 Corrales, very near the bridge in African Bay. I very much support this effort. I applaud all of you for working so hard since just last Tuesday. Incredible speed, the staff, the attorney, everybody. I can't think of a better way to use our Measure J funds, not just for supporting what visitors want to do, but those of us who recreate on that bridge every week, every day in some cases. I've been talking a bit with the local state park staff, Joanna Kurbabaz, I'm going to say it wrong, awesome local biologist who's a tremendous resource. I've been talking with anyone who's willing to talk. I'm happy to talk with anyone, but I think what's clear to me is there's 4 things that we need to focus on. One, of course, is the money to replace the bridge, which are great stepping forward to help with that problem. The second, of course, is the permits, and being the local permitting authority for coastal permits, that's fantastic, but as you know, there's a whole host of permits associated with replacing this bridge. It's not, I don't want to understate the complexities of it. The other piece is to think about is construction windows, because in this creek with steelhead and red-legged frog, we're not getting in that creek in the winter. We're just not going to be able to get in there. So we have an extremely narrow window to work in that creek, and it's the summer, but even in the summer, then you start to run into nesting riparian birds, which can shut down your construction project. So really, the best window is coming right up. It's like the fall, September, October 15th. Maybe in a dry year, you can get Fish and Game to let you stay in the creek till November 15th, but it's a small window. And the last thing is, of course, the contracting is going to slow down. You heard the guys, the state parks folks are acting in good faith. They just live in a different world than we all live in. They are not a nimble city. They are a big organization, and I know how it works as a consultant. It takes forever to get state contracts because it's just the wheels turn slowly, and they have very limited ability to speed them up themselves. So I think figuring out whether the person who mentioned a nonprofit is a possibility, if there's anyone else who could do the work and give it to state parks, they may not like that solution anymore. But I would focus on 2 things, which is 1, the permanent fix, and then the temporary fix. The first thing is, I think everyone thinks it's unacceptable that we can't use the bridge. It's going to be a risk. I was out there today with Joanna sloshing around in boots with Dave Holland, and we were trying to think of solutions. People were going across the bridge the whole time we were there. I couldn't believe it. They couldn't get over that big fence. So we need to think about, is there a temporary fix we can get in before the window closes to do the work? And I've heard bits from engineers, even the Bueller guy has said that there may be options. State parks didn't want to go that route because you heard them, they have a $2.9 million operating budget for 10 parks. So why would they spend, a couple $100,000 on a temporary fix when it's really needs to be replaced at a total of $1.8 million. So I get it, why that may not make sense in their world, but in our world, as people who use that bridge, that's a great use of $200,000. I'm just making that number up, but that's a great use of money to get a temporary fix in. So I would encourage you to try to get, and I hope there is a temporary fix we could get in this year, because otherwise it's kind of like, why bother? We want a temporary fix we get in this year's construction window, and then I hope we can work our darndest to get the real permit, by next year's construction window, not 2 years from now, next year. And I think both of those are doable. I'm not an engineer. I wish I could find some that would work for free that the state would accept, but I don't know those people. But maybe someone else does. But anyway, thank you for giving me a little extra time.
Walter, then followed by Paulette.
Hi, I'm Walter Sensing. I live at 439 Kehoe here in Denver Bay. And first of all, I'd like to thank the City Council very much for for your getting in front of this issue and for the communications that I've had with Marina and with Mayor Mueller. And I can't thank you enough for what you guys are trying to do here. I thank the public for coming out today. Short notice, 6 o'clock meeting. It shows how important this is to us, and it's very important to me. And I love it that John Hernandez made it tonight. He's back from vacation. He can help us in this effort, I think, tremendously with all the background he's had in this process. Alex did a wonderful job on the staff write-up. I commend you for that. The only thing I'd like to say is, after I've heard all of the information that has been going around about this, it seems to me that what we really need to get on top of is breaking through that barrier with Jerry Hill and Rich Gordon. And I want to say personally that I'm available to help in any way I can with that. And perhaps what would be nice to do is a community. They're getting ready to adjourn the session in Sacramento. It's coming up the end of August. They come back to their districts. Why can't they meet with us, with the community, with the mayor and the city members of the city council, and in an expedited manner? Because those are the people that are going to make this happen in terms of the long-term funding of this project. It's not going to come from us. It's not going to come from state parks. It's got to come from the legislature. And they're the people we're going to have to turn to. And anything we can do to support you in that effort, I'm personally happy to do. I've written letters. I'll continue to do that. I'll be a nuisance to some degree because I told them it's important to me. And I want to make sure that important message gets to the people it needs to get to. And I'm not sure it's got to Jerry Hill and Rich Gordon because they've never responded. Nicole has responded, Jeremy's responded, but never Jerry and Rich. And I think we deserve a response, and especially the mayor and the city council. When they go to our elected officials, they deserve to be heard. And I hope that we can achieve that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I might step in, and Nicole, you could speak later, but I can tell you that Senator Hill and Assemblyman Gordon and I are communicating almost daily, and sometimes they're wanting me to back off a little bit and just slow down the process because they are working really hard, but you know, it is the legislative time right now, and they are busy, and I think that's what happened on scheduling. So I understand, and I think the representatives heard it, and maybe that's a great suggestion. And it doesn't hurt during election time to come around and see everybody anyway, if they have time. So Paulette, please, and then followed by Tim Fine.
Okay, Paulette Eisen. Yes, I'd like to hear what our elected officials actually have to say and not their representatives. Now, I think basically what I think may be something that we should be looking at. First of all, I'm agreeing with this $100,000, but I always want to see breakdown of costs. Don't just like throwing money out at anything. I also heard a bunch of volunteers at our last city council meeting, I think, that are qualified to do work. I think that we should definitely be taking advantage of that as much as possible. I mean, we've got to get away, this city has got to get away from just throwing money down the drain. Or just throwing it away, down the drain. All right, so why don't we at least be the ones to come up with a temporary fix? How about the city of Half Moon Bay taking responsibility for a temporary fix and offering that out to the state, that we will be responsible for a temporary fix of the bridge until you come up with a long-term plan for replacing it? Why don't we try that?
Thank you. I believe Tony could respond to that even quickly. Even on a temporary fix, we still have to do environmental reviews.
Yes, we'll have to analyze potential environmental impacts, but what we really need to do, and I appreciate all the comments about not just writing a blank check. That certainly wasn't our intention. It's really to contact state parks and discuss with them concrete measures that can be taken in the short term and And it's really more of an effort to get the process started. Before a dime is spent, we would be reporting back to the council and updating the public at a council meeting as to exactly how this will be put to use. So, and then in terms of whether it's a temporary or a permanent fix, the process we could expedite for the temporary, given the serious nature of the issue and the need to get something done quickly, if indeed a temporary solution is feasible and if it can be done a lot less expensively and more quickly than a permanent fix, then certainly that would be worth exploring.
Thank you. And we really never have and never really want to throw money down the drain, trust me. This number we had to put out there because of the agenda item, and then we will definitely look at it. We don't want Lynette to get too excited seeing $100,000 out there right now. So we got to slow that down. So thank you, Tim.
Tim Pons, 651 Potter Avenue, and I support the council's spending of the measure funds for this undertaking. I saw the $1.8 million figure, and I Googled pre-built truss bridges and found one in less than 10 minutes and had a bid in my hand for an hour for $600,000 for 3 spans of 130 feet each to support a truck driving across them by a company that builds bridges for the state. It could be delivered in 2 months to the site, and that's included. It can be put on there with a helicopter, so the means and method of construction are extremely important when we go into the design process. And there needs to be somebody that says that we don't need to go into the creek bed because the footings are fine. The footings on that are helical piers, and all the plans show them, and if you inspect them, there has been an electrode that's been disconnected. That's one of the few things that Bueller said that was correct in their report. I don't know how many people read the report, but it's fraught with error. There was errors in that report. They said that water has inundated that bridge on a yearly basis. I don't think water's ever been over the top of that bridge at all, and they contributed some of the decline to that. I would be wary of turning money over to the state and have them spend it on engineers that don't know the area, that don't know what they're talking about. That's my only concern. That we should have somebody locally and a committee maybe here spearhead, and I'm sure it's legal for people to donate money and services of kind to the state. If it's not, I'll just leave. Because
don't leave. We need your thanks for the information.
But anyway, my kid, let me just give you an example. My kid found out the bridge was closed by a handwritten note stuck on the bridge. It was in a plastic bag that directed him to go out to Highway 1, the 12-year-old. This bridge is a hazard environmentally. It's got pressure-treated wood that's leaking into the creek. It's got corrosion, whatever's in Core 10, the elements in that metal are vastly going into the creek bed all the time. It's got ADA issues. There is no disabled access to the coast in that direction anymore. And if ADA access is such a big issue, I cannot see how expedition of this permit should be anything but the top priority of the state legislature in this field of events, of public works construction. We have a path for disabled people that's used a lot, kids on bikes, and it's not acceptable. I don't know about a temporary fix myself. I looked at the bridge and it's amazingly corroded. It's actually
Thank you, Tim. I need you to conclude. Thank you. Julie, please. And then last part will be Dave Holland, please. Expert on bridges.
Julie Barr, 792 Pilarcitos. I'd just like to add my voice to the chorus of thank yous to all of you for working so hard on this important vital artery in our community. I have a question for you though, because living in the Casa del Mar Avenue, I think our Casa del Mar neighborhood, I think our neighborhood is impacted probably more than any other neighborhood on the coast because we're within the closest walking distance of that bridge. And you've heard several people from this neighborhood tonight at the city council meeting talk about the impacts on our neighborhood. But as a neighborhood, we also communicate amongst ourselves quite frequently in person and electronically. And one of the proposals that has come up in our neighborhood discussions is what can we do in terms of organizing ourselves as citizens, besides showing up to these meetings and cheering all of you on from the sidelines. Would it be helpful, for instance, for us to put together a community petition? I have no doubt that that would get very strong support across all sorts of political stripes in this community. We don't know how to begin. We don't know how to help. And I speak to you to say there is an enormous amount of untapped energy in the electorate in this community, which I don't think we have harnessed yet. So we look to you as our leaders to tell us what can be done and what you think would be most effective. Showing up with picket signs and things like that may be counterproductive. But I think people have written letters. That's a great start. But I think a petition where we had thousands of signatures on it of people who vote in elections would also speak volumes. So please tell us what we can do. We're not just looking to you to solve this. We want to be part of the solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Dave, please, and that concludes public.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Dave Holland, 1500 El Granada Boulevard. A little bit of background and experience in this while I was with County Parks, that I did go out with Lynette this morning and we walked underneath the bridge and looked around, and I guess I had, aside from applauding keeping this moving and getting involved in it and putting some skin in the game, I just want to make a couple of comments. I think State Parks is in a tough position. Having worked in government for about 45 years, they've got legal mandates and safety issues and bureaucracy that was put in there for checks and balances. So the real question is, what can we do to help them move that along? And I think one of the things right now is we need to get a team put together pretty quick that has some of the critical players. You have the city, you have State Parks, and you have Fish and Game, which can end up being probably the most difficult barrier for a temporary fix or even the final fix unless you're on the same exact course that bridge is on right now. So I think we need to get that together, and I would advocate that, because if we look at a few different solutions, whether we look at a rerouting, a temporary rerouting, so that the trail can be in continuous use while the bridge is repaired or replaced. We're going to need to look at the permitting system, and we're up against the wall right now on that, trying to get something in there. And we've got to get some kind of solution in place if we want to get Jerry Hill and Rich Gordon active. We've got to take something to them. The money will follow the solution. I think there's a lot of energy for money. But even though State Parks is in a difficult place, I think if we can come up with some solutions, I think there are a number of private citizens and others that can contribute both labor expertise and money toward that endpoint. So I guess mine would be, let's get a team together quickly. I'm more than willing to help with that and get State Parks at the table with the team. I think they're willing. But obviously they can't do a lot from here. But we can help with that. We've got legislators that can help with that part. We just need a solution.
Thank you, David. I think part of that would be, we started to draft a couple with the NGOs. I think that's very important. And Coastal Commission is very important. And Fish and Game is a great suggestion. And I think we could pursue that right away tomorrow. And so we'll bring it back to the council. Thank all of you for your testimony. I think it was very important. Nicole, would you like to make some concluding remarks? We're not going to throw Jerry under the hill. So you're more than welcome to make a couple remarks. As I said, we are in constant, Alex has really worked hard in communicating, and myself daily, and emails. Everyone has a lot of suggestions out there. We're receiving a lot of them, and phone calls too.
I just want to commend the city and the council members and the staff for just being so diligent and proactive on this issue. Please know that your elected officials realize how important this is. Senator Hill and I know Assemblymember Gordon have been apprised of the importance of what this means not only to the coast side, to the coastal trail, to tourism, to the city itself. This bridge means a lot. And so we've been in constant dialogue with the city and with Parks, and we will continue to play a role in gathering all the stakeholders and seeing what we can do to facilitate the reconstruction of this bridge. It's needed. It's desperately needed. We need to have the bridge in working order again.
Thank you. Council members, I do know that 2 members have another meeting that better leave off too, but this is more important right
I got a library meeting.
Okay, 3 members.
Right here.
We're busy. Okay, Councilman Alfano, would you like to make some concluding remarks?
I'll just say there's something to thanks for everyone for being here and your suggestions. If this was the 1960s, we would all be out there fixing it, like everything else that needs to get repaired around here, from Smithfield being built to fields at the high school to everything around here. But we know that's not the case right now. We do have to go through the regulations, and they're tough to do. I think this is a great start. There's been a lot of phone calls and even back and forth with you. Please keep up the faxes and the emails to our legislatures. We are a small population, so it's not like we're a city over the hill, and they could get 1,000 out of 100,000 people. 1,000 for us is a lot. So please keep that up for now. And I think at some point, Walter and I discussed, we need to get a bus trip up to Sacramento for them to really see that we're serious. That's something what to do. But I think the $100,000, particularly with no strings attached, because everything the state is doing as we're coming up, from people volunteering, from regulations, with no strings attached with that $100,000, that's one less thing eliminated, that they have to make a deal to get a loan. So I think we're on the right track with that, to start the permitting. That's the very most important thing that we should do right now.
Councilman Patridge?
I always have trouble hearing this. I concur with Marita and with John Hernandez. John Hernandez is the historian on this bridge. He was one of the guiding lights for us to even start the Coastal Trail and do a lot of those things. But I think what we're forgetting here is that I think what's really important for me, and I think also for our council members, is to get the process started. It doesn't matter whether it's going to be fixed, temporary, or permanent. We have to start with that permits and working with the Coastal Commission and all the agencies. If we can get that started and get that moving, that's the key. It's not about all this other stuff. It's the permitting process that we want to get done quickly, like you mentioned, before the October 15th date. If we don't start that permitting process right now, we're going to be up a creek. And that's literally up the creek. I'm serious, because we can't get in there. We've tried too many times to do projects that have been held up because we didn't meet that deadline. So giving them the $100,000 to start that process of permitting, I think is really key. There's not a thing we can do in this city without having that coastal development permit or other permits we need from Fish and Wildlife and all that. If you look at the list of agencies that we have to go through, it's horrendous. That we need to start that process now. So I'm glad that we are thinking about giving this money to them to get that process started. It doesn't matter if it's a temporary or a permanent. We got to get the process started.
Councilman Walter?
Thank you. First, I want to thank our friends, Rich Gordon and Jerry Hill. I privately talked with them as well. I know they're well aware of the situation and know they are enthusiastic to help us, and they're friends of Half Moon Bay, and so I appreciate their efforts. If you could also pass those regards along. I think other comments are, I think there's so many great ideas tonight. I think we're all pointed, and this is one of those opportunities where we're all pointed in the same direction together. Those opportunities don't happen a lot in government and in politics, and I am certainly appreciative of that. I want to express my respect for state parks. I know they have a complicated job. I know they have a difficult budget situation. And I perhaps have been critical and direct with them, and I think my comments have been pointed but fair. At the end of the day, what we're trying to do is get to the point of collaboration. If we can collaborate and be at the same table with the right parties, I have every confidence we can get traction in this and move forward. We think about all the projects in our community right now that are happening, all the big ones. They're all happening as a result of collaboration. We had, from the smallest things, we had summer programs this summer only because we had a collaborative arrangement with Boys and Girls Club and the YMCA working together with the city to provide those programs. Our library project is happening because it's a collaboration between the city and the county, and our community and the Friends of the Library. The skate park project is a collaboration, Boys and Girls Club and the city. We need to be able to work together to move forward on this, and that is the key, and we just need to get to the same table. Even if at the table they say, we're really stuck, we don't know what to do, that's okay, then at least we're at the table together. That I think is the fundamental thing we need to have happen here. All of the comments about what can we do, can we use local resources, can we have volunteer engineers, I think we should, when we're at the same table, we can bring up those topics and broach those subjects and try to win support for that. I would encourage everybody to keep in contact with our State Assembly member, Rich Gordon, and State Senator Jerry Hill. They want to hear, they want to know, keep up the momentum. I'm also very interested in budgeting these funds, but not expending these funds until we have the line item understanding of how they will be used. But I think we need to say, these funds are available to get this started. Now let's figure out specifically what we need to use them for. Let's take the barrier out of the way. Let's invite state parks to the table. Let's try and get them to that table so we can have those discussions. I know it's difficult for them, for all the things they have to manage, but we have to help elevate this so they see the priority in our community. Above all, my biggest concern is more than the bridge. My biggest concern is a safety issue with children going out to Highway 1 or any resident going out to Highway 1 and being in a place that is not safe. Or being on the bridge and the bridge not being secured if it's not safe to cross. That is truly my biggest concern. We'll solve the bridge problem, but the urgency is coming from safety. And I think budgeting these funds and knowing that we'll define the detail behind them is the right first step. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Allen?
Yeah, I'll make it short and sweet. I'm going to echo what everybody else has said already, because Rick and I have another meeting to head to. At the end of the day, $100,000 is not pocket change for our community. It's a lot of money. But I think we all agree, when you want somebody to know that you're serious, you know the old saying, money talks, and you know what the rest of it is. I think that's what we're saying to the state. We're willing to put money to start the project. It's not going to be without strings. There's got to be clear allocation of where the money goes. There's no doubt about that. But I think this is the starting point, as Rick's saying, to get people to the table. I agree with Dave Holland. We need to reach out to these other groups and find out how we can get them so we're all on the same page, and find out how we can move this at the highest speed possible. And I think as you've heard, there are ways to go faster than 20 miles an hour. So with all that, because we do have to get out of here, I'll make the motion that the city allocate $100,000 in Measure J sales tax fund for the Pilositos Creek Bridge design and permitting costs, and direct staff upon completion of the design to consider issuing emergency coastal development permit for the bridge project.
I'll second.
It's moved and second. And any further discussion? Staff discussion? I will say, not to throw state beaches and parks under the bus again here, but gone down the road every day this last few days, and it's a mess to get into that beach down there. Let me tell you, I park cars on my pumpkin farm faster than those guys can get a few cars in there. Let me tell you, they need some pumpkin farmers over there to move them through, and then they're backed up all the way to Kelly, and it's just a popular beach, right? That's right. No help, but we have a motion and a second, and I thank staff for getting us this far, and I believe we need to put that team together. The team ownership will be like the Clippers owner. We'll start. I know, I'm still in discussion here. I won't yell and scream like that new Clippers owner from Microsoft about, let's go, but we got to go. So roll call, please.
Councilmember Patrick?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Fraser?
Yes.
Councilmember Coltrane?
Yes.
Councilmember Lefano?
Yes.
Mayor Mueller?
Yes, so we're, item public comment. I think everyone got their comments in. Is there anybody that wanted to speak anything that's not on the agenda?
Can we applaud?
Absolutely. We don't take that very often. meeting, and we will keep the public informed on our actions as quickly as possible.
Hey, Bob.
Thank you.